Hey guys, tonight we drift into the soft, olive-scented dusk of ancient Greece. You re-perched in the shade of a temple courtyard where the marble stays cool no matter how hot the day gets. Nearby, nymphs argue quietly about fig placement on a fruit platter. Somewhere overhead, a lyre plinks lazily, but no one's playing its hits, just the wind messing with things as usual. Everything is calm, slow, and sun-drenched. And that's when you spot her. Athena, goddess of wisdom. Also, apparently, kind of bored out of her immortal mind. She taps her fingers on the arm of her gold-danned ivory throne, while other gods chatter about their latest human mishaps. Zeus laughs too loudly at his own story. Hera rolls her eyes for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Hermes makes a pun about cow theft that he's used before. Have you been sitting in the divine realm long enough to notice something? Gods are eternal, sure. But even eternity gets dull if you're stuck at an Olympian brunch. Athena isn't even trying to hide her restlessness. You watch her shift in her seat, legs crossed, then uncrossed. Her armor clinks gently. She's always armored, because fashion is nothing without intimidation. She runs a hand through her hair, tied back with a thread spun from the clouds over Delphi. And then, like a bored student doodling in the margins of time itself, she reaches down to the ground. There, near her foot, lies a broken deer bone, probably left behind from some ceremonial feast. Most gods wouldn't look twice. But Athena, with those storm-gray eyes, picks it up and examines it like it might whisper the secrets of the universe. She turns it this way and that, sniffs it, and then a wind blows through it. And that's the moment. The sound is weird. Not beautiful, not awful. Just weird. Like the call of a sleepy duck that got into some wine. It echoes slightly, and the wind catches it. A nearby dryad turns her head, confused. You sit upright. Athena blinks once, then again, and blows a second time. It still sounds weird. But weirder still, she keeps going. Little puffs of air, then longer breaths. She finds that, by adjusting how she holds it, she can change the tone. A finger here, another there. The sound warbles now, less duck, more drunken seagull. It's still not lovely, but it's hers. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always magical to see where you re-listening from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're still watching her. This is the woman who invented the chariot, the plow, and according to one confused poet, the olive tree that tastes like war. But now, she's oddly fixated on making weird noises with a dead animal's shin. The other gods begin to notice. Hermes peers over his goblet of fermented lightning and raises an eyebrow. Dionysus chuckles. Ares snorts and says something about feminine hobbies, which is rich, considering he once tried knitting because it helped with rage. But Athena ignores them. She stands now, brushing off her robes, bone in hand. And she walks away from the party like she just remembered something far more interesting. You follow her because you have no choice. This is how myths work. She settles near a quiet spring in the hills below Olympus. Birds chirp, frogs hum, and the air smells of thyme and old pine bark. Athena kneels, cuts a few reed stalks, trims them, hollows them out. She's thinking now, calculating. Somewhere in that divine mind of hers, the threads of invention are pulling tight. The flute, as mortals will eventually call it, doesn't exist yet. Not like this. Pipes, maybe. Simple tubes, whistles for shepherds, but nothing precise. Nothing sacred. Nothing that requires the sort of focus Athena now displays, tongue between her teeth. Brows knit together, slicing thin air holes with a knife made from meteoric bronze. You settle into the grass. You're pretty sure this is how most bedtime stories begin. A goddess, a field, and the inexplicable birth of music. As night falls, she plays again. This time, it sounds passable, maybe even haunting. Like wind through hollow stones, or the sigh of a forest when the moon is new. The sound lifts upward. An owl calls back. A few stars blink, then blink again like they're not sure what they just heard. It's still not good, but it's consistent. Now, let us take a pause here to mention something real. The ancient Greeks did credit Athena with inventing the aloes, a kind of double-reeded flute that required puffed cheeks and serious commitment. And the sound, sharp, piercing. The kind of thing you'd hear echoing in the background of a Spartan training session, or during a ritual where nobody smiles. It wasn't meant to lull, which was meant to command. But back to Athena. You watch her spend hours tuning, reshaping, and testing her design. She carves decorations along the shaft howls, olive branches, and little symbols only she understands. The air is full of her breath now, cycling in and out, shaping sound like clay. You might be wondering, why does a goddess of war and wisdom care about music? Historians still argue whether Athena's association with the aloes was symbolic. Was it meant to show her dominance in all fields, even those outside her primary domains? Or was this a rare glimpse of her private side? A personal project, not meant for the battlefield or the council, but just because. You don't get an answer. Myth doesn't always explain. Instead, you find yourself growing drowsy under the stars. Lulled not by the music itself, still shrill, but by the rhythm of her movements. The steadiness of creation. The way she tests and tweaks like someone who has to finish the puzzle before she sleeps. At one point, a small woodland creature hedgehog with bright eyes crawls closer, drawn to the sound. Athena pauses, makes eye contact, and plays a little flourish just for him. The hedgehog flattens in approval. You're not sure if that's a musical critique or just hedgehog behavior. Eventually, the goddess smiles. That's the first time you see it. A genuine, soft smile. No war plans, no stern lectures, just satisfaction. But then she stops. She walks to the spring, flute in hand, and stares at the reflection staring back. Her cheeks are puffed out, her mouth pinched, her chin compressed. She doesn't look regal. She doesn't look divine. She looks goofy. And you know what? That moment, tit, matters. Because the next steps in this story, they hinge on this exact realization. Vanity, pride, the embarrassment of catching yourself doing something you thought looked epic, but actually looks like someone failing at balloon animal school. And this, dear dreamer, is where things begin to shift. For now, though, you lie back in the grass. Athena continues to stare at herself, frozen in a moment between glory and regret. The music is silent, but the wind still hums through the reeds she cut. You don't move, you hardly breathe. You just stay there beside Athena, watching the edges of that reflection ripple and fold like someone's whispering secrets into the spring. Her face remains still, but you can practically hear the internal monologue goddesses have them too, you know? One part of her is probably scolding herself for caring how she looks. Another part is offended on behalf of dignity itself. And somewhere deep down, she's definitely wondering if the satyrs are going to make fun of this. The sound of the flute had promised unexpected, sharp, eerie even, but now it hangs in the air like an awkward comment at a family dinner. Athena looks down at her instrument, then back at the face in the water, the cheeks, the strained lips, the undignified blowfish of it all. You watch as her brow knits, that same expression she wears before hurling a spear or inventing military strategy. Except this time, the enemy is a poorly timed glimpse of her own face. She lifts the flute again and hesitates. One more breath, one more try. A tentative note wavers across the glade, thin and fluted like a bird with stage fright. And that's when something shifts. Her eyes narrowed not in concentration this time, but in judgment. And not the calm kind. There's a long, slow breath, The kind you take before making a decision you already know is going to be final. Then she speaks not loudly, not theatrically, just a quiet, tight-lipped decree. This is beneath me. And with that, she stands, walks 2 steps toward the cliff's edge, and flings the flute into the night. No flourish, no drama. Just one powerful toss, the kind that launches ships or ruins cities. The flute arcs like a comet, vanishing over the ravine, swallowed by darkness and the stunned silence of the surrounding forest. You lie there blinking. That just happened. The goddess of wisdom has rage quit music. And somewhere below, the flute lands with a thud. Not in a river, not in fire, just among leaves and moss and the unmistakable oof of a goat-legged man who was in tea expecting airborne woodwind instruments to drop from the sky. But we'll get to him in a bit. Right now, Athena dusts off her hands and turns back toward Olympus. Her face has returned to neutral, though her stride is a little faster, a little more bristled than usual. She's muttering to herself about distractions, vanity, and how aesthetics matter when you're a divine role model. You follow, because again you're stuck in this story like a sleepy shadow. And because watching her walk off like that raises 1,000 tiny questions. Was the flute really that bad? Did it offend her sense of dignity? Or did it strike something deeper, some truth about herself she didn't expect to find in a hollow reed and a gust of breath? Historians still argue whether Athena abandoned the flute purely out of vanity, or if there was something else. A moral discomfort with art that stirred emotions instead of sharpening thought. Or perhaps, just perhaps, she understood something before the rest of Olympus did. That this particular instrument, beautiful though it could be, was never going to belong to her world. Back below the cliffs, morning arrives with dew-damp ferns and sunbeams slicing through the treetops. You're curled up under a bramble bush now, watching a small clearing where something stirs. Enter Marsyas. Well, he doesn't so much enter as sits up suddenly, rubbing his head and muttering in the dialect of tipsy forest beings. He's a satyr half man, half goat, all chaos. You'd know him anywhere. Shaggy legs, horns, just barely symmetrical, and an energy that says open mic night gone terribly wrong. He stretches, snorts, and immediately steps on the very thing that hit him, Athena's discarded flute. There's a pause. He picks it up, sniffs it, and tilts his head like he's trying to remember what category of object this belongs to. Then, naturally, he blows into it. The sound is not terrible, startling, yes. Loud, yes. But there's something raw in it, wild and full of potential. Marsyas laughs, not just a chuckle. A full, open-throated goat laugh. Because, of course, the woods just gave him a magic music stick. He tries again, louder this time, and then again. Soon the clearing is full of wild, echoing notes. Birds flap away in protest. A nearby badger rolls over in its den and mutters something unrepeatable. But Marsyas is in love. He dances in place, adding hops and twirls, the flute wailing like a forest alarm clock. He tries playing upside down. Sideways, he falls over at least once. But he's onto something. You can feel it. Here's the thing. In myth, Marsyas is known as a cautionary tale. But here, in this moment, he's just someone who found something that feels right. And because the gods don't own exclusivity on creativity, Marsyas begins to improve. Not overnight. Not with Athena's precision, but with the stubborn joy of someone who doesn't care how silly he looks. You watch him practice for hours, days. He doesn't sleep much. He plays while chasing birds, while stealing apples, even while balancing on a stump like he's auditioning for Satyr Got Talent. Eventually, the music starts to sound. Good, not perfect, not godly, but full of something human, messy, joyful, wild, and people well. Creatures start to notice. Nymphs drift closer during moonlit evenings. A centaur stops by to tap a hoof. A tree spirit pretends she just happened to be passing through, but she stays for the whole set. Even a couple of curious shepherds, lost on their way home, pause at the edge of the clearing to listen. Marsyas beams. He's got an audience now. His confidence swells. And somewhere far above, back on Olympus, a faint ripple reaches the ears of the gods. One of them frowns. You don't have to guess which one. Apollo, god of music, patron of the lyre, harmony, and smug sun-dappled perfection. He's the kind of guy who practices scales for fun. The idea that a goat-legged forest hooligan might be drawing attention with a flute? That's enough to ruffle even his golden curls. You see Apollo pacing, listening, raising one eyebrow in disdain. Because flute music. Flute music should not be trending. And definitely not because of Marsyas. But for now, Marsyas has no idea what's coming. He just plays and dances and plays some more. And somewhere deep in the forest, a note lingers longer than expected. Not perfect, but so close it makes even you sit up a little straighter. Meanwhile, a squirrel claps, not metaphorically, an actual squirrel. You chuckle, then yawn. The sun has dipped again, and Marsyas is still tooting away, trying to figure out how to play a melody backward just to see if it sounds like prophecy. You're drifting, and Athena. She hasn't thought about the flute in days, at least not consciously. But some nights, when she sits beneath the stars, you notice her fingers still twitch, like they remember something. Something made of bone and wind and the soft, echoing sigh of a song that almost was. You wake, or rather, you float from a gentle doze beneath a forest canopy. The flute is still playing. It's been days now, or maybe weeks. Time, in stories like these, doesn't really like to be pinned down. But Marsyas? He is no longer the clumsy satyr who got beamed in the head with a goddess-esque cast-off project. He's getting good. The music spills across the valley in shimmering waves. It winds through cypress trees, curls around marble statues half swallowed by moss, and even coaxes snakes from their burrows, not because it charms them, but because they're curious, like everyone else. And it's not just animals anymore. A couple of shepherd boys have started showing up with bread and olives, sitting cross-legged to watch Marsyas practice. A dryad brings him fresh water each afternoon, pretending it's because she needs it too. Even a group of half-drunk satyrs have started imitating him badly, but with enthusiasm. It's turned into a sort of accidental concert series. Marsyas, the forest's unlikely rising star. He tries new rhythms. He invents melodies. Some of them echo traditional tunes from the villages down below. Others, complete nonsense. But they're catchy nonsense. You find yourself humming along to one that sounds suspiciously like it could be a jingle for goat milk. And this is where things start to get complicated. Because remember Apollo, golden, glorious, immaculate Apollo. He hears the music again, this time drifting up, while he's oiling his lyre strings and composing his seventh sun-themed poem of the day. He freezes, tilts his head, frowns, not because the music is bad, but because it isn't. That shrill, puff-cheeked flute noise Athena invented. It's evolved. It's warm now, fierce, flawed in a way that makes it feel real. And that makes Apollo uncomfortable in ways he doesn't quite understand. See? Apollo's music is clean, precise, structured. His lyre compositions are like mathematical equations performed in golden sunlight. Perfect meter, perfect pitch. He performs in temples, not forests. His audience is noble, respectful, and always applauding at exactly the right time. But Marsyas plays in mud. He plays for creatures who never clap and sometimes howl instead. His rhythms don't follow formulas. His tempo changes with his mood. His songs sound like laughter, or like heartbreak, or like being a little too tipsy at your cousin's wedding and dancing alone anyway. And people love it. So of course, Apollo is going to do something about that. But first, let's take a moment for a historical breather. Ancient sources did, in fact, associate the aloes with rowdier context, festivals, bacchanals, Dionysian rituals. It wasn't the gentle lullaby of aristocrats. It was loud, emotional, and hard to control, which made it, in the eyes of many ancient writers, distinctly an Apollonian. Athena may have invented the thing, but it was Marsyas and the woodland types who embraced it. Whether that made them heroes or cautionary tales depends on who's telling the story. Now, back to Olympus. Apollo stands at the edge of his balcony, golden robe fluttering in the breeze, glaring toward the valley below like someone just insulted his harp on social media. He doesn't say anything right away, doesn't storm down in a fit of drama. No, he waits and watches. Because Apollo's smart, patient, strategic, he doesn't just want to stop Marsyas. He wants to prove something. Meanwhile, Marsyas is living his best life. He's composed a new piece called Goat Moonrise that's honestly not half bad. He's even managed to play 2 flutes at once, one in each hand, which looks ridiculous but sounds shockingly decent. You lie nearby on a smooth patch of moss, listening, half asleep, wondering if this is how genres are born. And then Apollo shows up. Not with lightning, not with threats, just casually, in silk, with a lyre slung over one shoulder and the kind of smile that says, "I'm pretending I don't hate you." Marsyas freezes mid-note. The crowd of woodland creatures scatters slightly, sensing the tension. You sit up straighter, sensing the same. "Nice music," Apollo says, voice smooth as olive oil. "For something so rustic." Marsyas bows, because he's not a total fool, but the grin on his face says he is not intimidated either. "Thanks," he replies. "I made it up." Apollo's eyebrow twitches. "Did you now?" And then, like a gladiator tossing down a gauntlet made of golden harp strings, he says it. "How about a contest?" Marsyas blinks. "You do too, 'cause this is the start of something big, something dangerous. Something that every storyteller, every poet, every parent warning their child about hubris will talk about for centuries. A god and a satyr, a lyre and a flute, logic and chaos, perfection and passion. I'll play," Apollo continues, "and you'll play. We'll let the audience decide." Marsyas hesitates, but only for a moment. He's cocky now, confident, and why shouldn't he be? People love his music. And besides, how bad can a contest be? But he agrees. Of course he does. The woodland crowd cheers. Even the nymph, who never cheers, claps softly. The sun dips low as Apollo sets up his gleaming lyre and Marsyas brushes the dirt from his flutes. You've never seen a more mismatched pair of instruments. A few hours later, the glade is full. Creatures of all kinds gather, fauns, nymphs, satyrs, even a few gods in disguise, lounging under trees with wine and smirks. The air is buzzing with anticipation, and you're squeezed between a very chatty centaur and a fox wearing a laurel crown. Apollo begins. The first note from his lyre is so perfect, so crystalline, that it makes the leaves shimmer. His fingers move like wind over water. The melody builds with slow mathematical grace, filling the glade with something that feels like sunrise, orderly, golden, serene. You exhale, it's beautiful. Course it is. When he finishes, no one speaks, no one moves. The silence is thick with awe. Then Marsyas stands. He doesn't bow, he doesn't smile. He just plays. And what he plays is alive. It skips, it stumbles. It cries out and flutters and belly laughs and slams into you like a gust of wind through an open window. It's raw and chaotic and unpredictable. It doesn't shimmer, it shakes. You hear joy in it. Pain, hunger, grit. It's not better than Apollo's music. But it's real in a way the lyre has never been. The crowd erupts. Some cry, some howl. A few faint, but that's mostly the satyrs being dramatic, and Apollo. He doesn't smile. He nods. Once, Then he says, "One more round." Marsyas blinks. "I thought it was just one." Apollo smiles now, but there's no kindness in it. "I'll play upside down," he says, "and sing at the same time." You can feel the trap closing. See, the Alcest flute Marsyas uses requires 2 hands and a lot of lung power. You can't sing while you play it. It's impossible. The lyre, though elegant, 1 hand, a voice freed. Marsyas hesitates. You see it now, the flicker of doubt. He's never sung in front of others. He doesn't even have a singing voice. You imagine it's somewhere between tipsy goat and wounded bagpipe. But he can't back down, not now. So he nods. And you can already tell it won't end well. The sun leans a little too low now, casting everything in that theatrical golden-orange light that makes even goat fur look vaguely divine. You can feel it in your spine. The atmosphere has changed. This isn't a fun jam session anymore. This is something else. The gods, the animals, the trees themselves, everything hushes. Apollo, because of course he goes first again, takes center stage like he owns it. Which he kind of does. That's the thing about gods, they never just enter a space. They occupy it. He turns his lyre upside down. It shouldn't matter. A lyre played upside down is still a lyre, just in a slightly weirder orientation. But the drama of it, well, Apollo knows how to work a crowd. Then he begins. This time, it's not just music. It's a performance. Apollo plays and sings yays simultaneously with the smooth, rich tone of someone who has never once had to wonder whether he's good at something. His voice is like honey poured over ancient stone. Golden, timeless. A little smug, he sings of logic, of laws, of the order of the stars. He names the constellations one by one, weaving their patterns through the melody like a musical astronomy lesson. His fingers pluck notes that sound like celestial gears clicking into place. And it's impressive, too impressive. You glance at Marsyas. He's sweating. See, this isn't just a musical duel anymore. It's a flex. Apollo isn't trying to win over the crowd. He's trying to crush his opponent. Not with rage, but with perfection. When Apollo finishes, the silence is absolute. No applause, no howling. Just ... Stunned quiet. Even the satyrs aren't drunk enough to pretend that wasn't amazing. Now it's Marsyas' turn. He steps forward, clumsy again all of a sudden. The flutes tremble slightly in his hands. He raises them, takes a breath, stops, because that's when it hits him. He can't match what Apollo just did. Not upside down, not while singing. Not within the rules Apollo just made up on the spot. It's a trick, a trap dressed up in formality, but he tries anyway. He flips his flutes awkwardly. The holes no longer align. His fingers can't quite find the pressure points. He brings them to his lips, inhales, and starts to play. You wince, it's not good. It's not even music. It's like blowing into a couple of wooden tubes while someone steps on your tail. Off key, off rhythm, no harmony. It squeaks, it squawks. A satyr in the back starts laughing, then tries to pretend he sneezed. Marsyas powers through, tries to pivot. Maybe he can just sing. He lowers the flutes, opens his mouth. A long, awkward sound emerges. Is it a note? Is it a word? Is it a dying pigeon? Historians still argue whether Marsyas was ever actually a singer, whether the myth simply dramatizes his failure to emphasize the dangers of hubris. Either way, it's clear he's outmatched here. Not just musically, but cosmically. He is, after all, a woodland creature, a mortal, a mythological underdog who dared challenge a god in his own domain. And now he's going to pay for it. Apollo doesn't smile this time. He simply raises one perfect hand and addresses the audience. Who wins? No hesitation. They all point to him. The animals, the nymphs, even the fox with the laurel crown. You want to object? You want to yell unfair at the top of your lungs, but you don't. You're sleepy, remember? And besides, this is a Greek myth. Fairness left the building 3 stories ago. Marsyas bows his head, not just in defeat, in fear. Because in these stories, when mortals lose to gods, it's not like losing a board game. There are consequences. Harsh, often wildly symbolic consequences. The kind that end up carved onto the sides of urns or whispered in tragedy plays for the next 5 centuries. Apollo walks toward Marsyas, and here's where things get ... messy. Historically, this part of the myth gets graphic, disturbingly so. Ancient versions describe Apollo flaying Marsyas alive as punishment for his arrogance. A musical duel that ends with a satyr's skin nailed to a tree. Greek audiences, for the record, had a high tolerance for this kind of symbolic violence. You and I trying to fall asleep with soft flute music in our heads. Maybe not so much. So let's soften the edges. Let's say Apollo punishes Marsyas. Not cruelly, not gleefully, just firmly. The satyr is stripped metaphorically of his pride, his flutes shattered, his music silenced. The forest that once echoed with melody falls quiet. Even the dryads stop bringing water. You don't see him again for a long time, but something strange happens. From the place where Marsyas stood, a spring begins to bubble. Just a little at first, a soft trickle. Then more, clear water, cold flowing steadily into a shallow stream. Some say it's his tears. Others say Apollo created it as a memorial and apology in the form of nature. Either way, it becomes a landmark, a sacred site. The Marsyas Spring. Travelers come to visit it, to bathe in it. Poets come to weep beside it. Musicians come to dip their hands in the water before performances. It's as though even in defeat Marsyas leaves a mark. And now we drift. Because the story isn't really over. Not for you. Not for the myth. You float along the stream, eyes heavy, as the water carries you past whispering reeds and long-forgotten songs. You think about music, what it is, what it means. Is it structure, perfection, order? Or is it the wild, howling mess that Marsyas played? Is it both? You pass by another clearing empty now, but you can still hear the echoes. The lyre, the flute, the laughter, the failure. You wonder, why did Athena really throw the flute away? Because she looked silly. Or because she saw, maybe even sensed that this invention wasn't meant for her kind of music. Maybe she understood before anyone else that this was going to end badly. Or maybe she just didn't want to puff up her cheeks. Greek myths are tricky like that. Motives tangle. Lessons shift. One moment you're being clever. The next, you're nailed to a tree for playing a song the wrong way. But still, there's something hauntingly beautiful about Marsyas' story. The way he dared. The way he failed. The way even his failure created something lasting. The spring continues to flow. Still flows today, if you believe the old maps. And somewhere beneath the rustle of leaves, the whisper of wind, and the quiet hush of bedtime, maybe, just maybe, you can still hear that off-key flute trying one more time to play something worth remembering. You drift downriver now, slow and gentle, as the Marsyas spring winds past ancient groves and forgotten glens. The air cools. The flute song is gone, but something lingers. Not a melody, exactly, more like a mood. You're not alone either. On the riverbank, there's a figure watching. Helmet glinting faintly in the moonlight. Spear resting lightly against her shoulder. Oh yes, she's back. Athena. You didn't think she'd just toss the flute and not check back in, did you? This is a goddess who keeps receipts. She steps through the trees with the easy stride of someone who can win a war just by raising one eyebrow. But there's a softness now. Something contemplative. She watches the water, tilts her head, her expression unreadable. Because here's the thing. She knows what happened to Marsyas. knows that the instrument she invented casually, impulsively has caused a whirlwind of music, rebellion, and tragedy. It would be easy for her to brush it off. Gods do that all the time. But Athena isn't that kind of god. She remembers. You follow her now quietly, like a thought that hasn't quite formed yet, into a crumbling temple just beyond the trees. It's old, really old. Moss curling between the stones. Roof long gone. The altar barely visible beneath a tangle of ivy. But there, carved into the stone, you spot it. A tiny pair of flutes. Not her owl, not her spear, not her aegis. Just two simple pipes, side by side. It's hard to tell if they were added long after the temple was built. Maybe a tribute, maybe a protest, but they're there. And Athena sees them too. She kneels in, touches the carving with one finger. Then, slowly, she sits and speaks. Not to you, exactly, but not to you either. She says, I made something beautiful, and it became something dangerous, and it was never meant for me. You sit beside her now, watching the fireflies dance around the ruined columns. Athena continues. Marsyas didn't understand the gift. He took it, as mortals do, and turned it into something wild. But perhaps that's not his fault. Perhaps it was mine. She's not crying, not even close. This is Athena after all, but there's something softer than usual, a rustle in the armor, a loosened thread in the great tapestry of divine pride. Perfection, she says, is lonely. You look at her, Hath the goddess who built cities, invented olive trees, taught men how to craft ships and plows and strategies. You realize maybe the flute wasn't a failure. Maybe it just didn't belong to her. Let's zoom out for a second. Historically speaking, the myth of Athena and the flute is one of those strange side quests in Greek mythology. Most of us know her as the goddess of war strategy, wisdom, and olive oil sponsorship deals. The flute story, though, it rarely makes the greatest hits album, but it lingers for a reason. Maybe because it shows something Greek myths don't often show. A god creating something, and then choosing to let it go. Not because it wasn't powerful, but because it didn't feel right. There's a fringe theory even among the fringe that the story isn't about vanity at all. That Athena abandoned the flute, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. That she saw in its breathy, chaotic tones a power that didn't suit the order she stood for. It belonged to the woods, to the wild, to chaos, not to strategy, not to her. Back in the ruined temple, Athena stands, brushes off her knees, takes one last look at the carving those little twin pipes sand, then turns away. She doesn't pick them up, doesn't try again. She walks off into the night, leaving them behind like a whisper that almost turned into a song. And you follow the river once more. Because this story isn't just about Marsyas or Apollo or even Athena. It's about invention and what happens when something you create takes on a life of its own. You pass a hillside next, where a young girl sits with a homemade flute carved from reed. She's not very good. In fact, she's pretty terrible. But she's trying. Her little brother claps along in completely the wrong rhythm, and their dog howls in protest. But the girl just grins and keeps going. And for a moment, it sounds just like Marsyas, like defiance, like joy. You roll past olive groves, where old farmers hum to themselves while pruning their trees. Past city streets, where street musicians play plastic recorders for bored-looking tourists. Past schoolyards, where awkward 12-year-olds squeak out hot cross buns during music class. The flute is still alive, still messy, still full of stories. You wonder how many of those players know the myth, know that their little windpipe has roots in divine experimentation and satyr rebellion and cosmic consequences. Probably none, and yet it lingers. The breath in, the note out. Simple. It's powerful. It's personal. You pass another clearing, this one quiet and you hear a faint rustle in the grass. Someone's buried a set of wooden flutes beneath a tree. Maybe as an offering, maybe just for safekeeping. But the tree has grown around them now, and when the wind blows just right, you'd swear the trunk hums. The story wants to end here. But it doesn't, because every time someone picks up a flute and tries to even badly, they're joining the myth. Not as gods, not as heroes, just as people, breathing life into hollow wood. So you lie back again. Close your eyes. The night air cools around you. The stars blink overhead like a silent audience, waiting for the next player. And somewhere, far off, maybe beyond the reach of even dream logic, the river keeps singing. Not in Apollo's perfect tones, not in Athena's calculated patterns, but in something else. Something freer. Something that will never quite be in tune, but that will always be worth listening to. The wind picks up as you leave the river behind, curling through reeds and stone ruins with the low hum of an ancient tune, forgotten by everyone except, maybe, the trees. It's a bit like walking through the leftover notes of a song, faint, unfinished, but still echoing. You know that feeling when you leave a concert and your ears are still ringing? Yeah, like that, but for myth. You wander up into the highlands now, your feet sinking slightly into dry grass. The moon is brighter here. And below it, silhouetted against the sky, stands something odd. A theater, not a grand marble one. This is older, harsher, carved roughly into the side of a hill like someone wanted to perform for goats and did. I'd have time for blueprints. The seating is made from flattened stones, patched together with what looks like moss and the occasional fig branch. A pinecone rolls across the stage like it's auditioning for a tragedy. You sit because something's about to begin. Enter the muses. Yes, those muses. 9 divine sisters, each assigned to a different aspect of the arts, sciences, or wildly specific academic specialties. One for epic poetry, one for dance, one for astronomy, because why not? They don't walk in. They sort of ... appear, draped in flowing fabric that defies gravity and modesty, and glowing ever so slightly with that soft Instagram filter kind of radiance. The middle one calliopeist steps forward. She clears her throat, and suddenly the hillside theater is full of anticipation. Even the pinecone stops rolling. She begins to recite. It's not the story of Marsyas. It's the story about the story of Marsyas. Yes, buckle in, we're going meta. Quo, because what the muses are performing tonight is a retelling of the myth, a poetic adaptation, a dramatic retcon with moral lessons and at least 2 interpretive dance sequences. You tilt your head. Is this satire? One muse reenacts Athena's cheek-puffing moment with exaggerated gusto, making a sound like someone trying to whistle through a napkin. Another mimics Apollo, strumming an invisible lyre with a dramatic eye roll. The audience? Satyrs, dryads. One confused chicken loving it. You chuckle too. Because here's the thing. Even in ancient Greece, people retold these myths with flair. They reshaped, mocked, celebrated, and questioned them. The theater wasn't just for stiff tragedies, it was also for humor, for reflection, for poking fun at the gods without getting struck by lightning. Historians still argue whether these performances were meant as sincere praise or a form of cultural therapy. Because when your gods are dramatic, vengeful, sometimes wildly unqualified for their own domains, sometimes the only thing to do is laugh. The play continues. In this version, Marsyas doesn't get flayed, he gets a job. As an errand runner for the muses. They hand him scrolls and lutes and bad poetry to deliver to various demigods and philosophers, and he spends most of the show tripping over his own hooves. He still plays the flute, but badly, and with enthusiasm. One scene has him serenading a sleeping giant who mistakes the music for mosquito, buzzing and swats blindly at Marsyas with a tree branch. A flute gets broken. A new one is carved. The cycle continues. And yet, through it all, the satire contains a strange warmth. The muses aren't mocking Marsyas, they're preserving him, keeping his name alive through performance, through laughter, through flawed but honest storytelling. There's a quirky historical tidbit here. In certain regions of ancient Greece, Marsyas was venerated as a local hero, not as a cautionary tale, but as a symbol of artistic courage. In some stories, he wasn't the fool, he was the founder of music itself. Funny how history plays favorites. The play ends with a song. A weird, clumsy, beautiful song played on wooden flutes and clay pots, and someone slapping their thigh because they forgot the drum. The lyrics are something like, "We breathe, we play, we fail, we try." And still the tune comes back, oh my. The muses bow. The audience howls. You sit still, blinking. Because you're not sure if you just watched a comedy, a tragedy, or a mythological TED Talk. But somehow, it all makes sense. The flute isn't just an instrument now. It's a metaphor for trying, for failing, for stubbornly showing up anyway, for puffing out your cheeks and making a ridiculous noise, even when the god of music is sitting 10 feet away, judging you. And here is another little-known fact. The Greeks didn't separate music from poetry, from storytelling, the way we do today. It was all mouse-like, the art of the muses. One sprawling, chaotic, heartfelt mess of expression. So yes, you're off-key humming in the shower. That's mouse-like. Your half-finished journal entry that turns into a haiku by accident. Mouse-like. That time you rewrote your breakup text 12 times and added a quote from Plato just to sound wise. Tragically, still mosaic. The muses leave the stage, fade into the hillside like mist. The pinnacone rolls again, and you rise. The moon is higher now, tilting slightly like it's drunk on all this divine performance art. You walk down the hill, step slow, sleepy, content. There's a soft sound behind you. Someone playing the flute again. You don't turn around, you just listen. Because it's not about who's playing anymore. It's not about perfection. It's about breath, about memory, about trying again, and again, and again. You pass an olive tree with carvings in the bark, symbols, flute shapes, a tiny owl, someone's initials. Time doesn't erase things as cleanly as we think. Stories echo. Instruments carry fingerprints, theatrical or imagined leaves, shadows on the grass long after the actors go home. You sit beneath the tree, close your eyes, and wonder, what if Marsyas had just walked away from the contest? What if he'd kept playing in the woods? Would his music have grown stranger, wilder, more joyful? Would he have founded a school of woodland jazz? The myths don't say, but that's okay. You're not here for endings. You're here for the drifting. The sounds between sounds. The flutes that don't quite play in tune, but still refuse to stop playing. You're lying under the olive tree still, half asleep now, when a breeze nudges your face and something in the distance begins to shimmer. Not a magical shimmer, more of a memory shimmer. You open one eye and find yourself looking at a bustling ancient cityscape. Stone roads, dusty sandals, goats being deeply unhelpful. Welcome to Phrygia, again, but not the same Phrygia as before. This is urban Phrygia. Market stalls, loud voices, ceramic jugs, and someone playing the aloes in a courtyard. While an old man waves his walking stick and yells at clouds. You stroll through the winding streets, barefoot and unbothered, slipping between potters and fishmongers, drawn by the sound. There it is again. That haunting, off-kilter music. Not refined like Apollo's, not unhinged like Marsyas, something in between. A musician with a chipped flute and a bent reed, leaning against a column and playing for no one in particular. You stop to listen. They nod at you. And for a moment, you're just there. No myths. No gods. Just you and a tired musician filling the morning with breath. Here as a historical thread to pull on. The Alus Marcius S beloved double-piped flute toisante, some niche novelty. It was wildly popular across ancient Greece, used in military processions, athletic training, religious rites, and awkward dinner parties. The sound, somewhere between a kazoo, a bagpipe, and the buzz of an electric toothbrush, but deeper and way more intense. It's said that Spartan soldiers marched to its rhythm before battle. Imagine that. Warriors moving in synchronized step, not to drums or horns, but to high-pitched nasal fluting. No one had headphones, so you got what you got. Some historians argue the alus helped instill discipline. Others think it was just loud enough to drown out the fear. Either way, it wasn't background noise, it was integral. You wander into a courtyard now where a group of young wrestlers are warming up. There's an old elite puffing away like his lungs are made of goat leather. The kids hate it, of course, you can tell. But they're stretching anyway, trying to look heroic, while one of them clearly has a wedgie. And there it is again. The flute, acting as a bridge between chaos and control. It's wild, it's disciplined, it's annoying, it's inspiring. It contains multitudes. Kind of like Marcius, you circle around and find a wall painted with fading frescoes. One shows Marcius in his final moments, arms raised, expression ambiguous. Is he defiant, pleading, Medaria? No one knows. But next to it is something curious. A second fresco, barely visible. A woman with an owl helmet and a flute. Athena again. But this time, she's not tossing it. She's handing it over. To Marcius. You squint? Is that real? Did someone repaint the myth? The locals seem unfazed. A kid walks by and says, "Oh yeah, that's Uncle Varna's version. He always said Athena gave the flute to Marcius. Said it was on purpose. You ask why? The kid shrugs. He said she knew it'd be safe in mortal hands." Now there's a thought. What if the myth doesn't end in punishment? What if the real twist is that it was all intentional? That Marcius wasn't tricked or foolish, but chosen fringe theory? For sure. But it's got heart. You drift onward into a tiny music shop tucked between two olive oil vendors. Inside, it smells like wood shavings and thyme. Flutes of all shapes hang on the wall. The shopkeeper, a woman with far too many bracelets and the kind of smile that knows all your secrets, nods when you mention Marcius. Still talk to him sometimes, she says, polishing a curved pipe. Not out loud, of course. That'd be weird. She hands you a flute. It's simple. Reed, worn smooth with use. Go on, she says. Give it a try. You do, and wow. It sounds like a duck sneezing into a sock, but the shopkeeper claps anyway. Better than the last guy, she winks. He inhaled a bug. You laugh. And then you try again. It's time, the note wavers, flutters, and just for a second holds steady. You feel it vibrate in your teeth, buzz through your fingers, stir something small and stubborn in your chest. You hand the flute back. She waves you off. Keep it. Everyone needs a bad flute in their life. You thank her. Step out into the street, and suddenly the city feels a little different. Not louder, just more layered. Because now you can hear them. The flutes. All around. Playing in alleys and rooftops and bathhouses and grain markets. Badly, mostly. But honestly, some joyful, some solemn, some just plain weird. But all part of the same ongoing, centuries-long, half-forgotten concert. And now you're part of it too. Another strange soul with a flute and a stubborn streak. You pass a row of clay statues, weather-worn, noseless. One of them definitely shaped like a chicken ant. You realize something else. Marcius never wrote anything down. No scrolls, no manifestos, no music theory treatises in 6 volumes. All he left was breath and story. Which, let's be honest, is kind of perfect. Because a story isn't something you own. It's something you pass on. And tonight, under this quiet sky, in this in-between space of myth and memory, you've joined the chain. Not as a god, not as a satyr, just as a listener. Maybe later you'll play again. Maybe you won't, but that squeaky little note you blew in that dusty shop, that's part of the myth now. A note out of tune, but perfectly placed. You keep the flute tucked into your sash as you leave the city behind half ornament, half talisman. The road ahead dips into a valley where the air feels cooler and the sky seems to lean closer, like it's listening. Which, honestly, it probably is. Because you're still in the realm of myth, and in myth, nothing is just scenery. The rocks remember things. The breeze has opinions. The birds might be minor deities having an off day. You follow a trail of wild fennel, your steps quiet. The flute occasionally knocking against your hip like it wants to be played again. You don't. Not yet. It's a delicate balance between curiosity and embarrassment, and you're currently leaning toward maybe later. The trail leads you to a stone circle, small, cracked, partially overtaken by time and moss, but unmistakably deliberate. You step inside, and for a moment, everything goes still. The wind stops. The birds pause mid-chirp. Even your stomach gurgles more politely. And then, out of nowhere, a low hum. It builds. Gently, like bees tuning their wings. Then voices. But not the choral kind. These voices don't harmonize. They debate. You realize you're standing in the middle of a very ancient, very ongoing argument. Welcome to the Symposium of Shadows. No chairs, no togas. Just silhouettes carved into the rock figures mid-gesture, mouth open, arms raised, frozen in the act of disagreeing forever. This, apparently, is where philosophers come when they can't stop arguing, even after they're long gone. And their current topic, you guessed it, Marsyas. One voice, crisp and nasal, declares Marsyas represents unchecked ego and allegory for hubris leading to ruin. Another scoffs, nonsense. He's the spirit of resistance, a proto-revolutionary in hoofed form. Or, perhaps, a third interjects smugly. He's simply a scapegoat to elevate Apollo's status by manufacturing contrast. You sit down. You didn't plan to. But the ground is oddly comfortable, and honestly, it's kind of fun eavesdropping on centuries of academic bickering. You lean back against a rock, still listening. One of the voices cites a scroll you've never heard of, the Apollonic Archives, where it's claimed that the whole contest was orchestrated by Apollo himself as a PR move. Another claims Marsyas was drunk when he found the flute and that none of this was meant to be mythologized. A third insists Marsyas didn't lose the contest was rigged, judged by a panel of sycophants too scared to criticize a god. Here's your historical morsel. Ancient Greeks actually did debate these myths. Publicly. In symposiums, plays, classrooms. Myth wasn't static, it was interpretive. Elastic, you weren't just allowed to ask questions. You were expected to, and the Marsyas myth. A favorite. Partly because it's juicy music, ego, divine punishment, dramatic outcomes, but also because it's unfinished. The original versions leave gaps, inconsistencies, invitations to fill in the blanks. Which people did. For centuries, in one later Roman interpretation, Marsyas is portrayed as a tragic visionary, a primitive artist whose rawness threatened divine order. In another, he's barely mentioned, just a cautionary name on a list of those who annoyed the gods. There's even a theory mostly whispered among fringe classicists that Marsyas wasn't real at all, but a symbolic merging of satyr folklore and regional music cults. Sort of like the ancient version of a folk hero invented to explain why everyone plays flute slightly out of tune. And then someone else in the stone circle speaks, quietly. "You're all wrong," the voice says. Marsyas wasn't punished for arrogance. He was punished for creating emotion without permission. Silence. You sit up straighter. Because, wow, dead hits. The idea that Marsyas, through music, gave people something raw, something unregulated, unsanctioned, unscripted. And that scared the gods more than any challenge ever could. It makes a strange kind of sense. Apollo's music is perfect, controlled, predictable. It inspires reverence. Marsyas, he inspires chaos, laughter, weeping, that awkward urge to dance even when you have no rhythm. He bypasses logic and stabs straight into the gut. And maybe that's the real reason he had to lose, because emotion is dangerous. You lie back again, letting that idea settle over you like a weighted blanket. The symposium fades slowly, not with a dramatic exit, just a soft retreat. The voices thin out, dissolve into wind, and the stone circle becomes just stones again. You rise, brushing moss from your sleeves. You feel different now, not in a magical transformation way, more like you've read an article that changed your perspective, and now you're quietly processing it while pretending nothing's happened. You walk out of the circle, and the path winds down into a glade. There's a little stream here, with frogs croaking like they're trying out for a choir they haven't practiced for. And then you hear it. Not the flute, not voices, just laughter. Real, unfiltered, totally irreverent laughter. You peer around the bend and see them. A group of young satyrs, half goat, half human, all chaos, playing a game involving a stick, a melon, and absolutely no rules. One of them spots you. Hey, you got a flute. You blink, nod, they cheer. You sit down with them, and one hands you a cup of something that smells like fermented raisins and burnt hope. You sip. It's terrible. You smile anyway. They ask for a tune. You raise the flute to your lips, and this time, you play. It's bad, but they clap, and one of them starts dancing, and the others join in. And suddenly, it's not about technique or pitch or control, it's about joining in, adding your note, playing for the joy of it, not the perfection, making music because your lungs are full and your fingers need something to do. That's the part of the Marsyas myth that gets left out, the part after, the part where others pick up the flute, where they play and share and laugh badly, where the music continues not as punishment or warning, but as legacy. As you sit in the grass, surrounded by giggling satyrs and off-key notes and one suspiciously aggressive frog, you realize something. The gods may have silenced Marsyas, but they couldn't stop the song. It's late now. Not in a cosmic sense, time doesn't exactly behave out here, but your bones feel it. A kind of story-deep tiredness, like your muscles have been holding up too many metaphors and are finally ready to rest. But before you drift off under the stars, something nudges you forward. A sound, not music, not speech, a kind of rhythm. Low, grounded, the kind of beat that moves with footsteps. Boots on soil, sandals on stone. You follow it through thickets of lavender and over shallow hills until you see them. Marchers, no flutes here. Just a procession of people, serious, solemn, steady, carrying torches, some in armor, some barefoot, all moving in the same direction. You slide in beside them. No one says anything, but they make space for you. And soon, you're walking with the cult of Apollo, the other half of the myth, the official side. You feel the shift immediately, like you've stepped into a cleaner, more polished version of the story. White tunics, laurel wreaths, brass lanterns, everything arranged, stylized, purposeful. You reach a marble platform where a tall figure stands waiting. He doesn't need to introduce himself. It's Apollo. God of the sun, God of the lyre, God of knowing you looked bad in that mirror and still judging you anyway. He nods toward the edge of the platform where a small bronze lyre rests on a silk cloth. Beside it, a weathered, double-piped flute. Yours, maybe. Or one just like it. It's time, he says. You glance around. Everyone's watching. No pressure or anything. You pick up the flute, and Apollo picks up the lyre. For a moment, silence. Then he begins. The lyre hums, clear, perfect. Not loud, but precise in a way that makes everything else feel accidental. His fingers glide like they've always known where to go. His music doesn't stumble, it shines. You wait, then lift the flute and respond. It's wobbly, honest, a bit squeaky, but it's yours. And in that moment, you realize this isn't a duel, it's a dialogue. Here's your history gem. In some rare variations of the Marsyas myth less known, but real Marsyas isn't a fool who challenges Apollo. He's a musician who engages with the god in a musical exchange. A kind of call and response where the winner isn't as important as the moment. A communion of styles, structured versus wild, divine versus earthy, technique versus instinct. That version rarely gets top billing. Too nuanced, too collaborative. But it exists, and you're living it. Back and forth you go. Lyre, flute, structure, chaos, light, shadow. Not fighting, not performing. Just weaving sound together like threads on a loom. Neither of you fully controls. And slowly, Apollo's music shifts, warms, softens. He begins to match you. Not copy never, that but echo. Acknowledge, bend. And for a brief moment, you understand something staggering. Marsyas didn't lose because his music was worse. He lost because he made Apollo feel something messy. And Apollo wasn't built for messy. But now he's listening. The crowd breathes as one. When the final note fades, there's no applause, no pronouncement, just stillness. Then Apollo does something strange. He smiles, not broadly, not sweetly, but with the faintest twitch of recognition, like something in your music stirred a memory he didn't know he missed. He sets down his lyre and walks away. That's it. No grand ending, no thunderbolt. Just quiet departure. And the torches extinguish themselves. You're left standing with your flute. And the sound of a night that feels different than before. Here's your quirky tidbit. There's a minor inscription from a ruined sanctuary in Anatolia that some believe references the reconciliation of tones. It's vague, weathered, barely legible. But some scholars argue it points to a ceremonial reenactment of the Marsyas-Apollo contest knot as punishment, but as ritual harmony, an annual event where dual music represented dual truths. Historians still argue whether this was a real rite or just poetic graffiti. But either way fits, because this version of the myth doesn't end with flaying. It ends with understanding. A quiet truce, a note held. And released. You leave the platform behind and descend into a grove lit only by moonlight. The ground is soft here. The trees hush the breeze. And as you walk, the flute in your hand seems lighter. Not like it's disappearing, more like it's settled. It knows its place now, and so do you. At the edge of the grove is a small spring. Just a trickle over stones, but enough for reflection. You kneel beside it. Look down, and there, in the shimmer, is your face. Tired, still a little bewildered, but calm. You see, the Marsyas myth isn't really about punishment, or even pride. It's about transformation. A mortal finds divine music, plays it, shares it, suffers for it, and in doing so, makes space for something that wasn't there before. A new note, a new tone, a new kind of voice. Yours. You dip the flute into the spring just once, not for cleaning, for memory. Then rise and start walking again. No destination this time, just movement. The world is quiet now, but not empty. You hum a little tune to yourself, Falky. Naturally, and the breeze picks it up like it's been waiting all night for something to carry. You walk until the forest thins. The path turns rocky again, speckled with dry pine needles and the occasional sandal strap someone clearly gave up on. You catch glimpses of owls blinking at you from above, judgy little blobs with necks that turn like security cameras. But it's not them that stop you. It's the statue. Huge, weathered, maybe 20 feet tall, half buried in the side of a hill like a forgotten prop from a mythological stage play. The top half of a satyr curled beard, broken flute, chipped grin. And carved into the pedestal in ancient Greek. Marsyas, musician, challenger, witness, you run your hand over the name. And just like that, the world shifts again. Not violently, more like a lens coming into focus. You're no longer in the forest. You're in a town square, not a modern one though. It has all the energy of a farmer's market colliding with a philosophy club. Stalls with herbs and honey, baskets of fresh figs, kids skipping rope with vines. And, at the center, a podium. On it stands a woman olive skin, streaks of gray in her hair, scroll in hand speaking with the kind of passion only someone halfway through a TED Talk truly believes in. So when Marsyas played, he wasn't just challenging a god, he was redefining what music meant. And to silence that, that's to fear what we don't control. Applause. You slide into the crowd just as someone next to you whispers, "This city's obsessed with Marsyas. They've got murals of him, you know? Even the bakery does Marsyas-shaped loaves." You raise an eyebrow. They nod solemnly. Delicious. Haunting. Turns out, you've wandered into a festival. The Festival of Disobedient Harmony, a yearly celebration in this town where people reinterpret ancient myths, especially the misfits, the ones who lost, the ones who broke rules, the ones whose stories were shaped more by punishment than praise. Marsyas is their patron. You wander through side alleys strung with musical garlands, ribbons with tiny bells and strings that hum when the wind moves. Children run past you laughing, faces painted with cider whiskers, flutes made from reeds in their pockets. And everywhere you go, people are interpreting. One trio performs a shadow puppet reenactment of the myth, except in theirs, Marsyas and Apollo end up forming a band. In another corner, a group performs spoken word poetry, reimagining Marsyas as a street performer in Athens who keeps getting fined for not having a license. You sit on a bench shaped like a giant flute and listen. Here's your historical snack. In some parts of Phrygia, Marsyas' supposed homeland, small cults did exist that honored satyr figures, not as wild troublemakers, but as intermediaries between nature and the divine. Their rituals weren't about discipline, but catharsis, song, dance, release. And Marsyas, whether real or not, became a vessel for that. The outsider who dared. One vendor sells incense labeled Tears of Apollo. Another hawks t-shirts that read Team Marsyas. I like my music, messy. A kid hands you a small clay Tacona coin stamped with two instruments crossed in the center. On one side, the flute, on the other, the lyre. Balance, duality. You tuck it into your pocket. Eventually, you reach the amphitheater. Old stone steps, crescent moon above, lanterns floating on strings like lazy fireflies. And on stage, a play, of course, and not just any play. The contest, written and directed by a local troupe known as the Sighing Goats. Their version, Marsyas and Apollo meet at a tavern. Marsyas is a traveling busker with calloused fingers and bad posture. Apollo is an uptight music critic with a god complex and perfect pitch. Their argument over what makes music, music gets out of hand. There's a sing-off, a dance-off. A moment where Marsyas tries to explain syncopation using bread dough. At one point, Apollo accidentally starts a conga line and hates himself for enjoying it. And the ending. It's not a death, it's a duet, flute and lyre together. Not in harmony, in tension. Beautiful, chaotic, unresolved tension. The crowd goes wild. You feel it too. That pull, because the truth is, life isn't perfect strings and celestial harmonies. It's missed notes and nervous improvisation and joy you can't explain to anyone afterward. And Marsyas, in his flawed, stubborn, flute-blowing way, gets that. He's not just a myth. He's a mirror. One last fact to tuck under your sleepy little brain. Scholars still debate whether Marsyas's story is meant as a warning or a tribute. The line between cautionary tale and misunderstood hero has always been blurry. Some see him as a rebel undone, others as a necessary disruption. A voice that had to scream even if it got silenced. You walk out of the amphitheater as the play ends. The night has cooled. People are beginning to drift home, the festival's energy settling into soft murmurs and scattered laughter. Someone hands you a flute-shaped pastry filled with fig jam. You take a bite, it's delicious. You wander the quieting streets, music still echoing faintly from balconies and open windows. Somewhere, a lullaby starts, a simple tune. It's probably improvised, maybe not even in tune, but you stop to listen, because you understand it now. Every time someone plays the flute, badly or brilliantly, Marsyas plays a little too. And somewhere, Apollo listens, even if he won't admit it. You wake not from sleep exactly, but from that soft pause where time lets go of its grip. You're not in the town anymore. You're on a boat, flat-bottomed, wooden, the kind that doesn't ask too many questions. It glides over dark water that smells faintly of myrrh and old paper. You're not rowing, and no one else seems to be around. Still, the boat knows where it's going. Candles drift beside you, riding the current. Little clay bowls of wax and flame, casting dancing shadows on the reeds that line the shore. You've arrived at the library. Not just any library, the archive of lost versions. It looks like someone dropped an entire temple upside down into a lake and decided that was good enough. Vines crawl over the marble columns. A few flamingos guard the entrance, unimpressed. There's no sign, but you feel the name in your bones. Inside, it smells of old ink, rain-damp parchment, and oranges. The room is endless. Shelves curve like constellations. Stacks wobble like they're waiting for a sneeze. Scrolls, codices, wax tablets, even cassette tapes labeled in Greek script. And every one of them, a version of the Marsyas myth. You pick one at random, an Egyptian papyrus, written in a blend of Greek and Demotic script. In this telling, Marsyas isn't a satyr, a court musician who accidentally plays an invocation to a god he doesn't believe in. Apollo hears it anyway, demands an explanation. There's no contest, just a tense conversation at the edge of a river. Marsyas offers his flute as apology. Apollo declines. They part silently. The river floods the next day. Another scroll, a Roman comedy. Here, Marsyas is a washed-up musician trying to win back his ex by challenging a lyre-playing rival. The rival is Apollo in disguise. The twist. The ex is more into dancing than music and leaves with the choreographer. Marsyas and Apollo end up drinking together and starting a band. You laugh, maybe too loudly. The flamingos peer in through the door. Sorry, here, as your historical anchor. Marsyas appears in Roman era. Mosaics far more frequently than in earlier Greek art, and often not in scenes of punishment, but in poses of performance. Lyre players watch him. Animals gather around. Sometimes, Apollo's not even present. Scholars wonder if this signals a shift in how the myth was understood. From warning to celebration, you keep exploring. One wax tablet is nothing but musical notation, ancient, untranslatable. It's labeled Marsyas's response. No lyrics, just a melody. Angular, strange. Sometimes Marsyas does. Neither wins, no one leaves. The world simply grows around their song. That might be your favorite one yet. Here's a weird tidbit. In one Byzantine manuscript, a marginal note claims that Marsyas's flute was found centuries later and used in Christian rituals before being lost during a flood. Historians dismiss it as folklore, but the manuscript's author insists the flute caused spontaneous weeping and an overwhelming urge to dance. You hear a sound behind you. Footsteps, soft, measured. You turn Athena. No armor this time, no helmet. Just a pale tunic, sleeves rolled, scroll under one arm. A slightly raised eyebrow, like she knows exactly how many stupid things you've thought today. I didn't throw it away, she says. I left it for someone else to pick up. You let that sink in. Then she sets the tablet down in front of you and walks away barefoot, quiet, unreadable. You reach for the tablet. It's rough, cracked, but the writing on it is fresh, modern, even a message. To the one who listens, you're not the first to carry this song, and you won't be the last. The boat is still there. You step in. The water carries you away. No oars, no sail, just rhythm. Somewhere behind you, a new candle is lit in the library window. Another version, waiting to be read. Maybe one day, it'll be yours. The boat glides silently for what feels like hours, maybe minutes, until you're not sure if you're redrifting across a river or across memory itself. Eventually, the water gives way to ground again. Not land, exactly more like floor. Marble smooth and cold underfoot, stretching out into a vast hall lit by moonlight streaming through a broken ceiling. Vines hang like lazy chandeliers. Birds sleep in the rafters. And ahead of you, pedestals. Each one holds a statue. Not of gods, not of heroes. Instruments, one at a time. First, a lyre. Delicately curved, with golden strings that hum if you exhale too close. Then, a double reed aloes, just like Athena's. Then pipes, drums, a conch shell horn, even a perfectly preserved tambourine with cymbals carved into its frame. The hall of forgotten sounds. You walk quietly, as if your footsteps might wake them. Each instrument is labeled, not just with its name, but with how it was lost, cracked by drought. Buried in volcanic ash, outlawed by decree. Disappeared after one too many weddings. It's beautiful and weirdly comforting. You stop at one pedestal. Empty, just a bronze plaque. Marsyas's flute, status, undetermined. Next to it, a small fingerprint pressed into wax. Someone touched this plaque not long ago. Here's your mainstream fact. Ancient Greek music was a complex art, heavily tied to mathematics and cosmology. Philosophers like Pythagoras believed that music mirrored the harmony of the sphere's literal ratios of sound, reflecting the order of the universe. Apollo, as god of reason and harmony, embodied that ideal. Marsyas, with his raw, emotional aloes, represented its disruption. That's why their clash wasn't just aesthetic. It was philosophical, structured beauty versus messy truth. And in this hall, you see it. Every instrument here once made someone feel something deeply enough to threaten the status quo, enough to be silenced. You sit down on a step and just listen to the silence, but also the residue, echoes. You imagine the heartbeat rhythms, the offbeat flares, the songs that once made people rise from their chairs, or cry without warning, or dance until dawn. Then you notice a wall at the far end, carved entirely with sheet music. Thousands of notes, no title. Just a single phrase inscribed at the bottom. Play, even if they tell you not to. You get up and follow a narrow path beside the wall. It leads through a thicket of fig trees that grew where they clearly weren't supposed to. They brush your shoulders like they're in on a secret. At the edge of this strange grove, you find a campfire, smoldering, not lit, but warm. Around it are figures, shadowy at first, then clear, not statues. People, or maybe memories of people. Musicians, you recognize a few. A woman in ancient robes clutching a tambora, curly-haired teen from Renaissance Florence tuning a lute. A man with a harmonica tucked into a scarf that says, "I stole this from a god." They all nod to you. Wordlessly, you sit. Someone hands you a flute. It's old, not Marsyas's, but not either. Because here's the quirky bit. In some Greek traditions, musical instruments were believed to carry the soul of their makers and, sometimes, those souls got passed down to future players. A musician could inherit not just an object, but a feeling, a sound, even a story. You raise the flute to your lips. No training, no confidence, just breath. It squeaks badly. You try again. This time, something happens. Not melody, not harmony, but truth. The fire responds, rising a little higher. So does the group. A violin joins in. A tapping foot. Someone hums. And soon, the air is full not with perfection, but with pulse. Together, you make something messy, beautiful, unrehearsed, alive. Afterward, no one claps. They just smile like they've been waiting centuries for that exact moment to happen. One figure leans toward you, a woman with silver eyes and a crown of olive branches. Athena, maybe? She whispers, "You played what needed playing." You look down at the flute in your hands. It's gone, replaced by a fig. You eat it, sweet, faint taste of bronze and defiance. Then the camp fades. Not disappears, just recedes, like a song that's ended but still echoes in your ears. And you're alone again. In a small grove, with birds beginning to chirp and the first hints of morning pressing at the edge of the sky. Here asks the scholarly debate that ties it all together. Some academics argue that the Marsyas myth wasn't even about music at first. That it evolved from older shamanic traditions in Anatolia, where flute-playing spirits were guides between worlds. The contest with Apollo might have been a later Hellenic reinterpretation, a framing device to fold older stories into the Olympian narrative. So maybe Marsyas wasn't a rival. Maybe he was a messenger, a transitional sound between the sacred and the mortal. And you've heard it now. You get up, brushing fig leaves from your clothes, and follow the sound of rustling water. A stream runs nearby, and beside it, a tree. A familiar one, gnarled, low branches. Carved into the bark. You made it, just that. No fanfare. No gods descending, just the tree, the water, and your footsteps, quiet in the moss. You walk beneath that tree like it's a doorway, because it is. The light shifts again, warmer now, but sideways, like late afternoon in a memory. You step into a space that's both wide open and incredibly intimate. A theater, carved from a hillside, ringed with stone seats. The kind of place where tragedy and comedy once competed in full sun, while vendors sold olives and kids threw figs at the actors they didn't like. But tonight, it's empty. except for one chair, center stage, and one object on it, a mask, white, expressionless, waiting. You walk toward it, each footstep echoing softly against the curvature of the amphitheater. The air here is heavy with performance sweat, dust breath held just before the punchline. You pick up the mask and hear applause, faint, scattered, from nowhere and everywhere. You put it on, not over your face, though you hold it up to the light. And suddenly you see her Athena again, but not as before. Now she's sitting in the back row, arms crossed, one eyebrow raised like a curtain mid-reveal. "Do you remember," she says, "why I've really made the flute?" You pause. "I thought it was to mimic the Gorgon's wail." She gives a dry chuckle. That was the excuse. But the truth, you wait. "I was lonely," she says. "I needed something that made noise because Olympus didn't." She leans forward now, more serious. They think silence is strength, but sometimes it's just cowardice in a toga. You hold the mask lower, and Marsyas reminded me that sound can cut. Here's your mainstream fact. In several versions of the myth, Athena creates the flute in direct response to tragedy. After witnessing Medusa's transformation, or in alternate tellings, after seeing the grief of mortals, she crafts something that can carry emotion through pure sound. No words, just breath and bone. And then she throws it away. Which brings us to the fringe tidbit. A handful of ancient inscriptions found in Anatolia and Sicily mention rituals of the one who was skinned and sang, suggesting Marsyas, or someone like him, was worshipped not as a fool, but as a martyr. In some regions, offerings were made to him at the beginning of spring as a way to release the old year's sorrow. The flutes were played, the masks were worn. No one dared speak his name. You sit down in the center of the stage, mask in your lap, and you try to imagine what it was like for Marsyas. Not the trial, not the punishment. The moment before, when he looked Apollo in the eyes and said, "I'll play." That's the part no one ever paints. Not the contest, not the flaying. The courage. To show up, to make noise in front of a god whose very essence is polished perfection. To bring your cracked, muddy, goat-footed breath into that space and say, "Here's what I've got." It gives you a chill. Not fear, not cold, but a soft, reverent awe. Like standing too close to someone else's truth. You put the mask on the stone beside you and speak to the empty rows. "I would have played too." The wind shifts, carrying something on it. Music, laughter, you're not sure? But Athena's gone. And in her place, a satyr. Just one. Young, looking, kind eyes. Flute in hand, he nods, sits beside you, offers the flute. You take it, try again. This time, no squeak. Just one clear note, then another, simple, a little sad, but yours. He plays with you, slowly, like a conversation you don't speak. Need to. The amphitheater fills not with people, but with presence. Like the walls of the myth themselves are leaning in to listen. Here's the scholarly debate. Was Marsyas a warning or a lesson? Some historians argue the myth was always meant to showcase hubris, that mortals should never challenge the divine. But others suggest it was a cautionary tale for the gods, reminding them what happens when they punish creativity too harshly. That the world remembers the song longer than the silence that follows. You end your duet on a gentle trill. The satyr claps once, smiles, and vanishes. Not with drama, just like fog. And the mask on the stage, it's changed. Now it's not blank. Now it's smiling. Not wide, not fake. Just enough to say, "Thanks for trying." You leave it there. A gift for the next brave fool who shows up with nothing but lungs and hope. You climb the stone steps of the theater, each one steady underfoot. At the top, the sun is dipping low. The sky painted in sleep, colors plum, gold, the softest blue. And there's a path, narrow, winding, but it leads forward. You take it. Behind you, the stage breathes quietly, as if it just finished telling a story it hadn't dared speak for a long, long time. The path narrows. So narrow, in fact, you have to turn sideways to squeeze through parts of it. The air smells like rosemary and something older resin, maybe, or the ghost of incense burned for a god long since decommissioned. At one point, a branch snags your sleeve. When you pull away, a single thread stays behind. You keep walking until the trees part, and what you see ahead is absurd and magnificent. A garden, perfectly manicured hedges, classical statues peeking out from rose bushes, small fountains shaped like dolphins, their mouths burbling gentle streams, and at the center, a grand table, like banquet for the gods level grand. Gold-rimmed plates, crystal goblets, but nothing on them till you blink. Then poof, it's full. Fruit, cheese, honey, fish wrapped in fig leaves. Someone went to the trouble of recreating what a luxurious ancient Greek feast might have looked like, complete with tiny scrolls beside each dish, noting its origin and mythological significance. There's even a bowl labeled grapes that Dionysus probably stole. You sit down at a place set just for you. The chair fits. The plate is warm. The wine glows faintly, like it has opinions. Then someone else sits across from you, Athena, again, but this time she's different. Looser, barefoot, her armor draped over the back of her chair like she just got home and couldn't be bothered. She grabs a fig, bites into it, and says, "So." You stare. So how do you feel about the flute thing now? You blink. Still weirded out by the skinning part, you admit? She nods. Fair. Here's your mainstream fact. Ritual feasting was central to Greek religion. Offerings to the gods weren't just burned at altars, they were often shared communally, reinforcing a bond between mortals and immortals. Myths were told, songs were sung, and in some cases, masks were worn not for disguise, but for channeling. Tonight, you get the sense that you're at that kind of table. The kind where stories are consumed as part of the meal. Athena pours you more wine. Not that she needs to, your cup never seems to go dry. You know, she says, I didn't invent the flute to win anything. I just wanted to feel something without thinking. She chews thoughtfully, but the others, they mocked the way my cheeks puffed out when I played. Said it wasn't dignified. Said it made me look mortal. You glance down at your own hands. Very mortal. She sees it. It's okay, she adds. That's why I threw it away. Not because it sounded wrong, because it made me feel wrong. She flicks a grape at a passing statue. It pings off its nose with a satisfying boink. Here's your quirky tidbit. There was actually a cult of Athena in the city of Delphi that worshipped her as Athena Musica, lesser-known aspect tied to harmony and rhythm, almost never acknowledged in popular myth. Some scholars believe this was a remnant of an older pan-Mediterranean goddess of music, rebranded under Olympian authority. Athena leans forward. Want to know a secret? You nod. I didn't quit music. She wipes her fingers on a napkin. I just started writing it under a pseudonym. You raise an eyebrow, like she grins. Calliope Eurydice, sometimes Orpheus. You'd be amazed what you can get away with when you stop asking for credit. You're not sure if she's joking? You laugh anyway. She takes one last bite, then stands. I have to go, she says. Another war, she snorts. A poetry slam in Thebes. Someone's reading epics off a lyre and calling it avant-garde. She tosses you something as she leaves. A small box, inside a reed. A simple, polished, double-reed mouthpiece, the kind that fits into a flute. You hold it in your palm. Warm, real. Here's the scholarly debate. Was the myth of Athena and the flute really about rejection or redistribution? Some argue it marked the transition of music from divine control to mortal domain. That Athena didn't discard the flute in shame, but gifted it to the world and claimed, unbranded, and free to evolve. And maybe that's what you're feeling now. This garden, this table, this night to passing of the torch. You walk to a small gate at the far end of the garden. It opens with a creak. Beyond it, a simple path through olive trees. You walk quietly. Every leaf seems to shimmer in your peripheral vision. Like you're not alone. Not really. The path leads you to a hill. Just a small one, but from the top, you can see everything. The cave where you entered, the grove of fig trees, the hall of forgotten instruments. Even the amphitheater, now lit by moonlight, like a story ready to be retold. And just to your right, a tree stump with a case on it. An old, weathered, wood-made flute case. You don't touch it. Not yet. Just sit beside it. The air is perfectly still. And in that stillness, you hear everything. The echo of defiance. It's the tremble of a first note. The whisper of a goddess who wanted, just once, to be messy. You open the flute case, slowly. Not because you're scared, though. Let's be honest. A little flute-related trauma is to be expected by now, but because it deserves that kind of respect. Inside, wrapped in soft, ancient linen, is the flute. Not a modern silver thing, but something older. Reedy, carved by hand. You can see little notches along the side where the maker probably slipped, adjusted, tried again. It looks human. Like it was made by someone who didn't want perfection, just music. You lift it gently, and for a second, just when you hear a whisper. Not in words, but in breath. It's as if the flute remembers. Not just the songs it's played, but the hands that held it. The mouths that shaped their longing into melody. The moment it was born from Athena's own frustration, carved in the shadow of a world that thought noise was weakness. You bring it to your lips, and you pause. Because here it is, the moment of decision. Do you play? Do you risk sounding foolish? Waking up old gods. Calling back a satyr who might want a rematch? You do. Because that's what the whole story has been about. Not fear, but sound. You breathe in, and you play. One note, then another. And the hill responds. Not with applause, not with fireworks, but with quiet. Warm, golden, welcoming quiet. As if the land itself has been waiting for someone to bring the myth full circle. Here's your mainstream fact. Ancient Greek. Music wasn't just entertainment, it was ritual. Healing, philosophy, Pythagoras. Yes, that triangles and theorems guy believed the entire cosmos was built on harmonic ratios. That the planets made music as they moved, and that humans, if they listened right, could tune their souls to the stars. You keep playing. The melody is nothing fancy. Just a few notes strung together like beads on a sleepy thread. But something in the way the wind leans in tells you, it's enough. Below the hill, the world breathes along. You see the echo of stories you've walked through. A thread still caught on a fig tree. A goat track with tiny, soft hoof prints. The amphitheater, now lit by fireflies. A little puddle where a drop of flute water still clings to the surface, waiting for someone to remember. And you know without needing words that none of this was about gods. Not really. It was about trying. Trying to feel. Trying to speak. Trying to be heard. Here, your quirky tidbit. A 3rd century BCE inscription found near Thessaly refers to a festival of echoes, where participants would climb hills, play music, and then sit in silence, just listening to what bounced back. They believed that the hill answered not with sound, but with memory. You lower the flute. The last note hangs in the air a little longer than physics should allow, then fades, and everything goes still. A stillness so complete, it feels like the story is holding its breath. But you don't. You breathe deep, full light, and you laugh. Quiet, of course. Wouldn't want to startle any lurking muses. Then something curious happens. The air bends just slightly, and through the haze of moonlight, you see a shape. It's Athena, one last time. Yes. She's not armored, not regal. She's just a woman, tired, smiling, her eyes soft, and in her hand another flute. She lifts it. You nod, she nods, and together you play. Just a few notes, just long enough to say, "We were here. We made noise, and that was enough." Here, S. The final scholarly debate: was Athena's rejection of the flute a surrender or a liberation? Some argue she abandoned it out of shame. Others believe it was an act of generosity of God, letting go of something sacred, so that mortals could discover it on their own. A passing of the torch disguised as a tantrum. Either way, the myth didn't end in silence. It ended with a gift. You stand. The flute case closes softly. No fanfare. No gods descending in golden chariots. Just the sound of your footsteps as you walk back down the hill. Back through the trees, past the puddle. Through the amphitheater, now empty but still listening. Until you reach the garden. The table is gone, but in its place, a chair. One chair. Facing east, you sit, and the sky lightens. Just barely. Just enough to say, this story might be ending, but another one is waking up. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the final note settle. The night is soft now. You feel it settle around your shoulders like a blanket that's been warmed by time itself. The air is slow and still. Even the crickets have quieted, as if they re-listening to the last echoes of a song you didn't know you knew how to play. You breathe in. Long, even. You don't need to understand every symbol, or every twist of myth, or even why a goddess of war once picked up a flute and tried to feel something more than victory. You just know this. Sometimes what lasts longest isn't the statue. It's the story. It's the music no one hears but remembers anyway. Your body relaxes deeper into the seat. You feel the hill behind you, strong and timeless. You feel the stars above you, blinking like sleepy eyelids. You feel your own heartbeat, steady and calm. There is nothing else to chase, no gods to impress, no contests to win. Just this moment, this breath, this soft hush of a world waiting for you to sleep. You drift lightly, like a leaf in temple water, like the last note of a lullaby made by hands that never cared whether anyone clapped only, whether you felt it. Sleep well, songbearer, you've earned the silence now. And it's beautiful.
you.